Can you hear me? Can you hear me through that? Yeah? Can you hear me on the back? Sort of? Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Lisbon UX. Today we're going to talk about research and how could we do better research. And we have three speakers. The first one is Sabah. She is there in San Francisco, I think. She's in San Francisco, yeah. She is a user researcher from Feedzai, the place that you're in, this company. And she's going to talk about 5 things she wishes every designer should know, which is a bit funny. It's cool. So that's why you came, I guess. And then we're going to have Maria and José from Tangível, and then Laura from Give a Shit project. Really, actually, Give a Shit. And that's the actual name. So we're going to have the 3 talks. Then we're going to have a little Q&A. Actually, for Sabah, after her talk, you can ask your questions as well, and she'll answer them. And then we're going to do a little exercise. If you've come to the last 2 Lisbon UXs, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, that's cool. You'll find out. So thank you very much for coming. Let's start with Sabah, and I hope she will. She's listening to what I'm saying. Are you there?
Yes, I'm listening. Okay,
Awesome.
I'll take it away then, if you're done. Hi, everyone. I'm Sabah. As Paulo said, I am the user researcher for Feedzai. I say the user researcher because I am the only one. So that means I am on a lot of projects and try to work with a lot of people all the time. I work on conducting, planning the research here. And I'm just going to go through 5 things that I think every designer should know about research and just try to remember that, you know, research is a partner of UX, and without research, you really don't have UX, and vice versa for design. So let's get started. So the number one thing that I would want a designer to know is that discovery is for discovering, but it is not for showing designs. And what I mean by this is that a discovery usually means a contextual inquiry, which is understanding the participants' tools, their environments, their processes that they go through on a daily basis, what kind of tasks they carry out. It is not for throwing up designs that we have created and having them go through that, because that is going to give us skewed data. And we can't have that. So in order to, and it's not appropriate to show it because usually if you throw up designs without having any sort of unstructured questions, then it gives us data that is not viable. And if we will show designs, then it's always good to have some sort of flow or some sort of journey related to it. So that's the first one. The second one kind of builds off of the first one, which is asking questions or talking about the design is not the same as doing research. An example is doing interviews. So interviewing is a method where there's structured questions that you ask the user based on taking them through the journey for the design, or contextual inquiry where you ask them what they do on a daily basis, weekly or monthly, throwing up designs and asking users or clients or participants what they think is, 1, not research, because again, it's unstructured. 2, it's not data, and it's really like getting the opinions of the people that you're asking. So again, not really real data, and that's not really how research works, is asking questions out of order. It usually leads to not good data. Number 3 is observation usually leads to reliable data. And what I mean by this is actually examining the user using the design or using whatever environment or system that they're in. And where they struggle is where you learn the most, and where you find usability issues and gaps. That really is powerful, to watch them struggle or watch them succeed in the design. Asking them what they think about things or asking them what they expect is fine in some sense, but what the user says is not what the user really will show you. I mean, they'll show you what they really want and need. And it'll also show us how they react to certain parts of the UI, which is really helpful, because then you'll already know based on their facial expressions or their body language, because users or participants have a tendency to compliment the design because they don't want us to feel bad. But really, the point of having user research is to find the struggles and find these successes in the design. And so we want them to struggle. And I would hope, and I like to see the users struggle, because then that gives us good data and it tells us where we're wrong. And number 4 is looking for themes and patterns always leads to good design. And what I mean by this is essentially when you look for patterns and themes, let's say, for example, you can categorize themes that you've seen in a design where the user struggles in one certain part of the UI. And the number of people that I like to test for like a usability test would be 5. A contextual inquiry is much more, but just now and as the users, and if all 5 of them struggle in the same place, that's a pattern. And so it'll tell you and inform you when you create a scenario to create a data-informed design. And that way, the design has a more behavioral focus and you understand where the user is coming from. There is more empathy, and having empathy in the design always leads to more success. And you'll have an easier time finding gaps in the design if you come at it from a place of, behavioral analysis and empathy. And the last one is one that I'm going to talk about a little bit longer, but research exposes the participants the mental model, which is not possible, and I would not recommend doing it based on your gut, not possible to understand until you watch them perform the tasks. And again, what I mean by this is that a lot of times, especially when we don't have interest, that there's not enough time at pretty much every organization, unless it's like a big organization. But time is of the essence, and so we try to think about, okay, well, what would the user do? Let's try to put ourselves in their shoes. But in reality, there really is no way to accurately do that because we don't know the user, and we can't be as arrogant to think that we know them. You can make as many personas as you want, and you can think that you know your users, but really at the end of the day, their mental model is really what their internal explanation for what they would go through in the system or the design. And there really is no way to understand that unless you watch them perform tasks and you examine them and you understand the problems that they're going through and why. And also this gets into quantitative versus qualitative data as well, because you can measure as many things as you want for quantitative data, but that just tells you the what. It never really tells you the why. And so qualitative data, like examining people and understanding how to use the tool or the system, really gives you an indication on why they're struggling or why they're having successes. And that was fairly quick, but I wanted to save some time for questions because I know you all must have a lot of them. And so I can go back and talk about things and expand on the insights, but that's all I have for you guys. Thanks.
Thank you. Can you see me? Sort of. Okay.
I can see you, yes.
So I'm going to go through the audience to ask them if they have questions. I mean, they should have questions. And who wants to ask something? Any question? Yes.
Does it reach out? Yeah. Hey there, can you hear me? From the other side there?
I can hear you, yeah.
All right, cool. So yeah, thanks a lot for your presentation to begin with. I was just wondering, could you go back one slide exactly? Yeah, so you were saying that, so one thing is the user mental model, which you can't really understand until they actually do some tasks, right?
Right.
So I was actually wondering, what do you really mean by mental model, and if you have any practical examples?
Sure. Yeah, so by mental model, like by the definition, is essentially the user's internal explanation on how the system or the design works. And a good example is one that we've done a few times here at Feedzai, where one of our products, we usually work through the product as a contextual inquiry, and really watching them struggle or work through the product, like Case Manager, for example, gives us a kind of a viewpoint on how they use it and how they expect to use it, which is what a mental model is, and kind of recording that really helps us understand how to better design the product. And so we would really not have known how a user expects to use, or their explanation for why they use certain parts of the UI in certain ways without examining them. So there really is no unless, so hopefully that answers your question.
That was funny. The connection broke a little bit right as you
That's what it
were
is.
concluding. But could you, for example, I'm reading the sentence that you have on the slide. What I think you could also mean is that the only way to actually understand the mental models is to observe them, is to observe the users.
Yeah, that's the ideal way, yes.
Well, yeah, ideal, not only. I'm a bit extreme sometimes. More questions?
I have a comment, but I think it might be interesting for the audience. So here at Feedzai, we separate. I'm a UX designer at Feedzai. We separate UX research from UX design, and maybe Sabah could tell us a bit about how we do this separation and how we work together, because it's a cool dynamic, and not everywhere in Portugal we have this two teams. So, well, actually we're one team, but separating these tasks. So maybe it could be cool for her to tell us about her experience, our experience.
Sure. Great idea. So user research and UX design is kind of separated a little bit in the team. And in terms of how we work together, the ideal process is syncing and working through both the design plan, ideally, and the research plan together. Which means that the designers should have a say in what kind of questions should be asked in the research. And where I come in is that I organize and structure it in a way that where the user has a natural flow, because the goal is to mimic a real world environment as much as you can. And so kind of shaping the questions, and you have to be trained to write behavioral questions, and there's certain ways to shape them in order to get viable data. So ideally, we would sync pretty much on every step of the process. So when we first meet about the project and create the goals and the objectives, and also ideally the designers are observers when we conduct the research, because having more heads than one in watching and examining the users is always helpful. It helps us find patterns, and helps us find either some things that went wrong or some things that went right in the process. And so we are kind of separated, but the ideal way is to kind of work together and kind of have two processes aligned, and that's how we do it here. Any other questions?
Cool. More questions, people. Laura, yeah. No.
Hi. I just want to ask, I don't know if I misunderstood it, what is your professional background? Or if you can just explain if it's just design, or where do you come from to have this observatory look? Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I can quickly go through it. My professional background is in anthropology, which is the study of humans and their cultures. And I specifically did anthropology for health because I was actually planning on going to med school. So UX really wasn't in my radar. But I pivoted and found UX, and it combines both my interests, which is technology, as well as working with humans, because I think creating an easier and more usable, friendly world for people, especially because technology moves so quickly, is really brings me happiness, as corny as that sounds. And but yeah, my background is in anthropology, which kind of helps me understand and has trained me to understand how humans react to things and watch for things. But thank you for that question.
That was the question that Laura was expecting. So who asked the question was Laura. There was the answer that Laura was expecting, because she's also an anthropologist, and she was kind of testing you if you were
Cool.
also as well.
Cool.
More questions, people? One more question?
Hi, I'm Hanaísa, and I would like to know what is the output of this research.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again?
Output of the research. You say about the research, but the outputs.
What is the output of the research?
Thanks, Beth. The out of the research, I guess we mean the impact of the research ideally is, so what happens is, a good example, we'll do the research, like for Genome is a product that we have, and we did contextual inquiries for that product. We presented the data, and then that data helped inform how we should do the design sprints, and planning the design sprints and having kind of reiterating on the design and improving it is ideally how it should go. So really the research should the deliverables.
Like, is there a report or something and stuff like that?
Sorry, guys, it's been a long day. Yeah, the deliverables are reports, or we present the data, we record, we present the data to the rest of the team. So that being the team that the product is actually the team that works on the product, as well as anyone else who's interested. And yeah, that's how we share the information, which I think is the question. So it's a couple of things. I like to write the reports, which not much people read, but yeah, I hope that answers the question. I'm not hearing anything correctly.
That's cool. One more question?
Okay, you're cutting in and out, so I hope I can hear this one.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so I'm not sure if you were specific about this, but I was wondering, this UX research that you do you normally do it for new features? And if not only for new features, you also do it to work on existing features to find flaws or areas of improvement? And if so, how do you do that?
Yeah, good question. The answer is yes to all. So I guess it depends, because there's like methods in terms of what's related to what. So if you want to understand how to improve features, creating a task analysis or doing another like contextual inquiry and understanding how people use it is ideal. Creating new features, we would have to, again, do some sort of like So for example, I heard something.
Can you hear us? Can you hear us?
I'm sorry?
Can you repeat
I
a
can
little
hear
bit? Yeah, the connection cut out a bit.
Oh, sorry. What did you guys hear? Okay, I'll start over again. Okay, so I'll be quick. There's methods per the kind of research that needs to be done. So task analysis can be done for new features, where you create a journey and you design based on that journey. and you can test how the user goes through that. You can test it in a dev environment or use Sketch to create a design, whatever floats your boat. And to understand current features or to understand where the gaps lie in current processes, I would suggest a contextual inquiry. That way you really do get into the guts of observing how people use tools and environments, and then you can find usability issues. So yeah, there's a lot of methods you can do. UI testing is like preference testing or multivariate testing. So I would say it really depends. And again, sitting with the designer and having a close relationship with them really helps inform what kind of methods that I would use. Again, I hope that answered your question, and I hope you heard me.
She did. We did. So one last question.
Hi, Sabah.
Hi.
I have one last question. You mentioned that you are the sole UX researcher. You also mentioned that you produce reports that you assume that no one reads. My question,
Yeah.
because handing over research is always sometimes a pain to the rest of the team. Thank you. So
Yeah.
do you ever bring other people from the team to do your contextual inquiries? Do you involve them in research so that it's easier maybe for them to be involved and get the data firsthand?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the goal for user research is, and I do have Beth, the director of UX, and she was the only one probably in the organization that understands research at like in a deep way. And so I do have at least one other person, and I'm not completely alone, but I will say that involving the designers and the PMs and the engineers or developers and having them involved in the process and being observers kind of gives a new perspective. So if, for example, when we go on client visits and stuff, engineers and PMs and designers should come along and watch and be involved in the process. I will say specifically for sessions and things like that, where we have direct access to the participants, there should be one facilitator, which is the researcher, or someone who has been trained to do the research, and someone else there to observe, because one, too many people talking distracts the user, and two, having too many people there kind of disrupts their habitat or environment, kind of be invisible. If we're doing it in their office, that's different in a lab. But again, you want to mimic kind of how they really use the product. But yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much, Sabah.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Okay. This is the one, right? This is the one. Can you hear me? Yeah? In the back? Yes. So, next up we're going to have Maria and José from Tangível, a UX company originally from Coimbra, but that has offices now in Lisbon, right? Yes, I've heard. And they're going to talk about a tale of... what was the blind man and the elephant? Blind man and the elephant. Blind man and the elephant, a tale about assumptions in research. So, welcome them up.
Hello, everybody. Change the coisa?
Yes.
Yeah. Para frente e para trás. Começas tu, não?
Yeah. Hello, everybody. I'm assuming that all of you are researchers, UX researchers, or most of you. That's an assumption, okay? It may be wrong, but that's my assumption. I also believe that you are looking for the beers after the talk. That's another assumption. And okay, well, when we do research, we are always doing these assumptions. And this is a big problem. We are talking about today the problem of assumptions in our research. So when we are doing research, we have our own assumptions, our teammates have assumptions, and then the stakeholders have assumptions, and we don't see each other's assumptions. This is a very huge problem. It's like an elephant in a room. Everybody knows that it is there, but nobody is taking attention to that problem, okay? So we are going to see a little movie about elephants and six blind
men.
people.
It was 6 men of Hindustan, to learning much inclined, who went to see the elephant, though all of them were blind, that each by observation might satisfy his mind. The first approached the elephant, and happening to fall against his broad and sturdy side, at once began to bawl, "God bless me, but the elephant is very like a wall." The second, feeling of the dust, cried, "Oh, what have we here? So very round and smooth and sharp? To me 'tis mighty clear. This wonder of an elephant is very like a spear." The third approached the animal, and happening to take the squirming trunk within his hands, thus boldly up he spake, "I see," quoth he, "the elephant is very like a snake." The fourth reached out an eager hand, and felt about the knee. "What most this wondrous beast is like, is mighty plain," quoth he. "'Tis clear enough the elephant is very like a tree." The fifth, who chanced to touch the ear, said, "Even the blindest man can tell what this resembles the most. Deny the fact who can. This marvel of an elephant is very like a fan." The sixth no sooner had begun about the beast to grope, than seizing on the swinging tail that fell within his scope, "I see," quoth he, "the elephant is very like a rope." And so these men of Hindustan disputed loud and long, each in his own opinion, exceeding stiff and strong. Though each was partly in the right, and all were in the wrong.
Isto não está. Acho que é preciso. Ok. Okay, just like in this tale of the 6 blind men and the elephant, we have the same situations in UX teams and UX projects. So UX teams are people, projects are made by people, and sometimes, when we're lucky, for people. That's not always the case. So the problem is every one of us has limitations, human limitations, and that can impair the way that we research. We put our own views, our own opinions, our own way to see the world, and that can influence. The same happens with stakeholders. They have their own assumptions. "Oh, I really know my client. I know it quite well, and we're going to do this because my client is going to love it." But actually, every one of us is like having an assumption, a belief. We are actually basing our research in those assumptions, and that could be really dangerous. We have perils in something that we call assumptionism. Assumptionism is like the flu. It attacks unconscious teams, and it lurks from behind. So assumptionism is when you base your research on assumptions or beliefs, but without proving that and using facts from research. And the first peril is when we focused only on the end user. And this is weird, okay? We are from UX, user experience. Shouldn't we focus on the end user? Yeah, but user has context. The user, if it interacts with a system, it can influence that system and can be influenced by that system. And if it's normally, this happens a lot with services, it interacts with other people. And those people should be researched too, so that we have the whole vision and not just the fan or not just the tail of the elephant, so that we can see the broader image of our problem. And sometimes in research we find out that the problem isn't directly related with the interface of the end user. It can be something in the backstage. It can be something that happened wrongly with some customer experience in the side of the service design, for example. So the tail is the user doesn't live in a bubble. It's not isolated, so neither should your research. Research the entire system, the entire picture. The second one is mono research. Is when you choose to do only one type of research. Oh, I'm going to do just some user tests. Or I'm going just to do some interviews. And we don't cross-reference that information from that research with other information that could be hidden, because every research methodology has its limitations. So we have here some Christian Rohrer graphic that explains what kind of research we can use we should always try to focus on things opposite on this graph. So if we do some behavioral, you should do some quantitative. If you do some attitudinal, maybe you should do some behavioral too. And try to mix things up. Of course, this is difficult when you have low budget in your research, or you have to sell research inside your project, but it's going to be richer either way. Try to do it with less users, but more diverse. And that's why, because we want to reduce the uncertainty. And sometimes that uncertainty cannot be proven with just one type of research. So there is no such thing as bad research. That is a myth. We can really mess things up when we don't research things well. If you assume that you are the end user, if you direct or condition in some way the responses of the people with who you are testing, all that falls into assumptionism, that lurking disease that every UX teams have. Finally, following the leader. And this leader is more the influencer. So everyone that has impact on the decisions of the project. And normally this happens, oh, I really know my user. I know it quite well. We're going to develop this thing because they're going to love it. Or I identified the solution. Oh, let's make an app. We haven't done research and the solution is immediately an app. So if we're going to follow that and only research in that direction, or skip research following the leader, what we have, a research unicorn. I have an example of a client that's one time in a stakeholder interview said, oh, my product is fine, the price is fine, because the minimum wage in Portugal is what? 1,000 euros. So everyone can pay this. So this is assumptionism at its best. So the user on the mind of that client was a unicorn, someone that could buy everything, that had the amount of money necessary to buy that product. So if stakeholders can prove why they think the way they do, we must research. So in a nutshell, research, we have to be careful not to give in to our own limitations, our own bias. We speak a lot in bias, in personal bias when we're going to do research. Research just the end user, so research the end user and everything that touches that end user, either it's the context, the environment, other people, and even now we have a lot of problems about impact and sustainability. What's going to be the impact if we don't research the outcome of some task that person is going to do? Then moral research, doing only one kind of research, and finally following the leader. And as you can see, that is not an elephant. Okay. So, is there treatment for this kind of disease of assumptionism? Okay, there's kind of mantra in design that we should always make things visible, shed some light on it. So if we focus and try to do some research, we're going to definitely find the real shape of the elephant. So
I would add that we can see the assumptions in research as bugs in our code. If someone here has already coded, they know there are always bugs. They are invisible. So when we find one of those bugs, what we want to do is to fix them, right? So here the same thing. We want to find those assumptions in our research because they are destroying the quality of our research, and we want to fix them. How can we fix them? With research. Okay.
Okay, so let's imagine that the blind men of Hindustan, they decide to do a project. They want to promote the elephant. They think the elephant is great. And they want to promote and bring tourists to Hindustan.
With a website?
Yeah, with a website.
But that's an assumption.
That is an assumption, by the way.
Okay.
So they assume,
okay.
It's going to be the website, the solution. So they built a Kanban. And this
Do you know what's the Kanban? Yeah. Board? Okay.
Okay.
Anyone use the Kanban research board? Anytime?
Yes.
No?
And
one person. Okay. Yeah. This is very cool because it's like a Kanban, like what we see in Agile.
Agile, yeah.
Okay, but instead of having user stories or bugs or something like this, we have assumptions and other things, facts. We have also things that we don't know in the first column, things that we don't know, research questions. Then in the second column, we can put their assumptions. those assumptions. And in the third column, we can put write down the facts, things that we found in our research. So the good thing about this kind of tool is that we can show this to the stakeholders and our team. And when we see a column of assumptions with a very long list of assumptions, it's scary. It's very scary for the stakeholders because they are making decisions based on a lot of assumptions, right? This is very risky.
Okay. Yeah, just like Zé was saying, one of the main reasons we do the Kanban, this research board, is to really scare the stakeholders. Because sometimes they don't know the dimension of the problem. Ah, I think it is like this. Oh, just gonna follow this pathway. And yeah, okay. When they see the number, when they see that Kanban column with 20 items, they go, oh, I'm going to have the accountability to say yes to that many assumptions. So this is a visual tool and like a defense tool for the UX team to say, okay, are you going to assume this is going to go this way? Then you got to take accountability because you have a lot of assumptions. So this is the example of the Kanban board they did in Hindustan. So things we know, we don't know. Yeah, the elephant, what it hits, and what is his name. That could be important. Things we think we know. Well, some of them think it is a snake, some of them think it is a tree, others a spear, and things we actually know. We know it is an animal, and that the elephant right now, it's in Hindustan. So what we want always is to put things from the columns on the left and take them to the column on the right. So they did some research and now they already know that the elephant is big and has 4 legs, and the elephant has 2 tusks and one of them is broken. So they deep dive on their research. But that's another part. I'm going to throw the ball here to José.
Yes.
There's a tool that we can use.
There are a lot of techniques that we can use to, of course, to make findings, to have findings about all these assumptions. When we do research, we can use a lot of techniques, but we are showing this one and the previous, the Kanban research board, and now the Kano model. Did anyone use Kano model in their life? Okay, that's a very, very interesting tool. Okay. It was invented by Noriaki Kano, that's why it's called Kano analysis or Kano model. And then it was brought to our community by Jared Spool, one of our gurus. Yeah. When we usually use Kano analysis here after the ideation phase to prove that some ideas are good and other ideas are not so good. And based not on our assumptions, but based on the user feedback through this method. But we can use this too, the Kano model here, just after the initial phase when we have done some research about stakeholder interviews. Yeah. Yeah. And this picture shows the concept, right? We have 2 axes. The horizontal axis shows the investment that is put on the feature, and the more we go to the right, the more is the investment, the higher is the investment. And the vertical axis shows the level of satisfaction that can be indifferent or negative. It is frustration for the user, and if it's positive, it's delight. So what we want to do, Kano and Noriaki Kano put the data in the plot and find these patterns. Some of the features use this behavior. They are performance payoff features. So the more you invest in the feature, the more the user will be satisfied. If you don't invest in the feature at all, they will be unsatisfied, very frustrated. Okay. Then we have basic expectations. Those features are features that the user expects, and if they are not in the product, there will be that's very bad for the user. They will be very angry.
Some really bad reviews on social media.
Yeah, but if you invest in them, you must invest a lot of money to have what? Just indifference. This will never bring satisfaction for the user. Okay, it's like the example of hot water in the shower in the hotel. You expect that it will be there and the shower will work, okay? But you are not going to do any party and whoa.
Open the shower. Oh, there's hot water. Whoa.
Okay, and then we have these attractive features. Features that if they are not present in the system, then okay, there is no harm to the system. But if you do some kind of investment, a small investment, it start to bring satisfaction to the user, and it can be very delightful. There are also two more important kinds of features, the unimportant features. That's the features that the user doesn't care. And if you invest zero or a lot of money, that will have no difference to the perception of the product to the user. And then you have the reverse. So here it's a bad feature, the feature that the user doesn't want. So we are going to use the Kanban and the Kano analysis to see if one of their assumptions is a good assumption. One of the assumptions was by one of the stakeholders that was saying that I love voice search. Remember, they want to build a website about Antunes and the elephant. So one of the stakeholders says, I love voice feature, let's use it. It's going to be our killer feature in the website. So what do you think? This is a good idea, this is a good assumption. Do we want to go on with this feature? We don't know if the users really want search voice. So we are going to do a Kano analysis. A Kano analysis is a kind of survey, and we have to do two questions. The first one is called the functional question, and we ask only this question. How would you feel if you could, and then the feature in the system? If you could search in Hindustan website with voice comment, right? And then there is a dysfunctional question that is the same, but in the negative form. So how do you feel if you could search in Hindustan website, if you couldn't search with voice comment, right? And then there is 5 types of answers. They are the same. The user can answer, I dislike it, I can tolerate it, I'm neutral, I expect it, and I like it. And it's the same for the dysfunctional question. Yeah. So we give this survey to a bunch of people, and everyone answers the questions.
Just to know, this is a quantitative method, not a qualitative. You cannot answer the why question. You can know that a lot of users have this pattern, but you don't know why they think this way. Okay, it's qualitative.
It's important to note that this is an indirect method of research. Yeah. We don't ask the people if they like voice comment or if they want this feature in the website. We never ask this. We ask how would you feel? And based on these questions and the cross.
Yeah, from the dysfunctional with the functional.
Okay.
You do a matrix. We're going to show you that.
There is a matrix, and we find what is in which category of the Kano model this feature will fall. So okay, let's go. This is the matrix. So the functional question, we are going to assume that most people, or one user is chose I'm neutral. I don't care if there is a comment, voice comment in the website. And then the same user responded that I would expect it to not be there. How would you feel if you couldn't search with voice? And he responded, I'm expecting it. So crossing these answers, we get this result, this U, which means this is unimportant. So we do this with one user, we do this with a bunch of users, like 100 users, and then we have a pattern here. Mm-hmm. Okay? And then after doing this with a lot of users, we can start to have an idea about where this feature will fall. Namely, in this case, the Kano analysis shows us that voice search falls here in the quadrant of unimportant features. This is one one way of viewing the result, okay? But another one, what we were testing was petting the elephant was considered an attractive feature. So we should maybe invest in this feature and not in this, right? So with this method, we have killed one assumption and find out that this one, the second one here, is maybe a good idea. We don't know why, but we know that's true.
Yeah. So don't mono research after doing this. Ask people, okay, go do some field research and try to find the why. Okay.
This is another
way to present it.
To present it. It's a radial graph, and we can see most of the people are answering unimportant. Some of them don't like this. This is real data.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We've done this for a client, not for Hindustan, but for another client. That's the real data. Okay. Okay.
So after this, so in a project not far away, the assumptions did not betray. Now the result is a success and not an assumptionism mess. So at the end, everyone really happy with an award-winning elephant.
Yeah, everybody's hiring. You know, everybody's hiring. Feedzai is hiring, Tangível is hiring, everybody's hiring.
Everybody's hiring.
Who wants to ask a question?
Hey, yeah, thanks. I've got it's not an assumption, but it's a question. It's the Kano analysis you've done, because you're asking a hypothetical question.
Yeah.
How would you, right? So people can't predict what they're going to do. They're going to give you, they need to understand what you're asking them in the first place, okay?
Yeah.
And then secondly, they project themselves in the future and to give a statement. So I would, if I was a stakeholder, I would be a bit concerned about this, because you're saying, well, we have the evidence here, X number or whatever the sort of graph was showing. Yeah. I wouldn't be, as a stakeholder, I must say, I wouldn't be satisfied because it's not proven to me.
Yeah,
how did you? I'm sure you come across of this scenario.
Yeah,
how did
it's not. It's not.
to that?
As I said, it's not the only method of research that you use. So the ideal is you only go to the stakeholder and debunk some kind of assumption if you have mixed data from a lot of research, not just from the Kano analysis. This is an indicator, and this is about the present moment and about that target users that did the survey. It has its own limitation. For example, if it was a blind person, probably that would be a basic expectation or a performance. So it is also biased by the kind of sample of users that you use. Okay, so the trick here is not to truly fall into the results of the Kano analysis, but mix them up with another research and then consolidate the data and then present to the stakeholders. Because yes, it's a little bit weak if it's just like this. I don't know if.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have to interpret the data.
Yeah.
It's not you cannot follow the
data is, to me, fundamentally flawed, because it's a theoretical question. I'm just saying my opinion.
Sure.
Well,
yeah.
we can do remote and remote kind of analysis with a survey online, like you said, and we can do it with physically in person. Yeah. So in this one, we can ask people about what do you think about it? Why did you?
Why did you answer this way? Yeah.
Okay, and we can here try to understand the why of their questions, and this is very much more interesting.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but there was another one here.
Thank you, first of all, for your presentation. In an ideal world, we would have infinite resources, infinite participants, all that. We all know we don't live in that ideal world. How do you find the balance in between the decision to test an assumption? And if you touched the point in answering the previous question, but how do you find the balance of deciding which assumptions to test, since they require different levels of investment to test, they have different scopes. How do you manage that part of filtering out which ones are
the ones you should focus on? Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, I think this is more of I think this is more of an exercise that we do with our clients or stakeholders. We use these as personas to communicate with stakeholders. And exposing all the assumptions is very powerful because they never think about it. Just looking at the Kanban and seeing 20 assumptions and doing all the decisions about their product in those assumptions is scary. So the first thing, think about assumptions and bugs. When you have a product and you code, right? You have a team, the quality assurance team, that is looking for finding those bugs, right? And there is small bugs and there is very scary bugs that are show blockers. So these ones are these really bad bugs must be fixed without doubt, right? So if the stakeholder can see that, well, the person that is very powerful in the company and have all the decisions is aware of this problem, that there is maybe a problem, and all the future of the product and the sales and all that is dependent on one assumption that there is very, very weak in terms of certainty, then maybe it will find resources to help you try to verify if this is true or not, how is the problem or not.
And you,
right?
you can also create some like effort matrix with your stakeholders and put them all together and have some criteria and say, okay, for you and for your business, for the impact in your business, what do you think these assumptions are the ones that are going to have more impact? And do exactly the same thing. This is almost an effort matrix, but for the users. We're going to see what impacts more or less the user. So we're going to cross that and say, okay, for your business, what do you think and what we as experts think that could be the assumption with more negative impact on the outcome of the project. So this is very collaborative, and we don't use just one methodology. We're always jumping between methods so that we can reduce the degree of uncertainty. Okay?
Hi there.
Hi there.
I was just wondering, so then again, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And I was wondering about this kind of survey approach, right? Where you ask this functional and dysfunctional question.
Yeah.
And so actually...
That's me. What?
Okay, it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just need some water.
That's important.
Yeah, that's important. Yeah, sure. Sorry.
Yeah, so I was wondering, so we were talking about research, and then in that kind of questions, we started talking about actually features.
Yeah.
So, well, a solution, right?
Yeah.
So I guess my question in research is more like, when you present such a question to the user, right, it's an hypothesis or a way of presenting a solution in a sentence.
Yeah.
So how do you cope with what the actual user interprets?
Yeah, sure.
What you expect, and is it trustful or not, right?
Okay, yeah, sure. When you do this, when you do this with assumptions, this is only useful when those assumptions are about user behaviors and user likes, okay? You don't do this about business assumptions. So if one stakeholder is very focused on saying, okay, my child loves pink and I want all the products to be pink. So this is an assumption that has an impact, direct impact on the user, what the user likes or dislikes, and the Kano analysis can go there. If you have another type of assumption, that's difficult to do with the Kano analysis. But yeah, normally the Kano this way is a question. But when you're in the ideation phase and not in the assumption phase, what you can actually do, if you have some prototypes, some rapid prototypes, some crazy 8 design that you design, you can put the picture of the idea and show the idea in the picture. You ask the question and show so that that reduces the level of ambiguity of the interpretation of the user in the end. But like any quantitative methodology, you're not always quite sure about the why, if it really understood that. And with the Kano, there's a trick. You need to be really specific. So this is an example. It's voice search. If you're going to ask, would you like to search? People, yeah, I would like to search. But what kind of search? because I like to search typing, but I hate searching by voice command. So you need to narrow the focus when you ask this question to reduce that, that ambiguity. Yeah, sure.
Just a follow-up.
Yeah.
But so then you mentioned one point, which is like likes and dislikes.
Yeah.
So how much are we between research and how much are we actually between
Assumptionism? Yeah.
Yeah, or like more of a marketing expectations and
Yeah.
in that sense, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, this is just like to reduce the level of uncertainty. When you have a lot of features and you're not quite sure what's the way, this is an indicator. It's not in any way in research, and even when we're designing, we never have certainty about anything. We cannot never say, even if it's qualitative research, we cannot, oh, I'm sure that the user is going to behave this way. I'm sure that simply doesn't exist in UX design or service design, human-centered design. So the only thing that it does is light some pathway, possible pathway, an indicator that, okay, so we found a pattern, like people really dislike voice commands, so let's do some qualitative research and find out why. It's always mixed, just so, because if you focus only on this type of research, it's assumptionism anyway, okay? So the only way you have to is to reduce that uncertainty, trying to break down with like the 7 whys or the 5 whys. Why? Okay, the user acted this way in this kind of research. Why? Is there any complementary type of research that can help us debunk that why and answer that question? And we dive down deeper and deeper until we have a level of certainty and time constraints and whatever the project has, so that you go, okay, I have a level of certainty that I feel that this is the right way to go. Okay. And then actually, in the end, you're going to user test it, and then it's another level of debunking it, okay? So every time you're advancing on the phases, you are reducing the level of uncertainty with the continuous research, okay?
Okay, cool.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So, I have to fill in a bit of time while Laura goes to the bathroom. So Laura, I met her in a UX panel sometime, and she, well, I can talk whatever I want because she's not listening. She is a design anthropologist, and she has very strong opinions about who should do research, as in not designers, but anthropologists. And she is also the founder of a project called Give a Shit, and which is a project that focuses on advocating for water in
Urban water management, sustainable
yes.
urban water
management. Advocating for saving water in cities and houses and all that, specifically toilet water. So it's it's called Give a Shit. And she's an anthropologist, and she also is part of the ESA network, which is the Applied Anthropology
Network. Yes.
Net. And she's going to talk about how to
Myths of knowing people's needs.
the myths of knowing people's needs. Yeah. What we designers think we know, but actually not really.
Let's see. Yeah.
Where's the
Pointer. Weird. Okay.
Cool.
You hear me? Yeah? It's okay? Okay. Hi, everyone. First of all, Paulo, thank you. And thank you, Uper, for recognizing the importance of also anthropology in the research, because we are speaking a lot about UX, but let me tell you, as an anthropologist, and I'm very happy to hear Sabah speaking, not only, but our first focus is research, And what we do from first day we enter studies, we start to research. So we are really trained to be researchers. Though it's not called UX, but it is related to users, and it's absolutely related also to design. And today, I was already shortly presented, but I have just a short image, and just to say my background. So I'm an anthropologist, but my PhD, I'm just specializing in design. So I'm regularly collaborating with designers, architects, working in interdisciplinary teams. And I'm happy to speak on design anthropology because even when I met Paulo, we were speaking, but what is this? No one knows what is design anthropology. And on the other hand, I'm also teaching on the similar topics. But what I like the most and why this provocative image, it's really, I work as a water toilet advocate in my professional life, in my personal life, and through the project Give a Shit, and also as a researcher. So what I'm going to show today, it's part of the Give a Shit project that I'm founder of, but it's not the only thing I do. Research I'm showing, it can apply to many fields. I work in tourism, in urban planning, in many things, but let's go back to toilets and cities. So first of all, coming from academia, I'm sure that things are changing for a good and hopefully faster, because we need more researchers which are trained and specialized, but being also specialized how to communicate data that they research to people. And this is what we are trying to do also in European Association for Applied Anthropology, that we organized last year the event in Lisbon about design anthropology, and this year is going to be in Oslo, and it's called Why the World Needs Anthropologists. And my first question about the research and about the myths of research, and you can be offended seeing some of the photos I'm going to show, or feel like that, is how do we know that we are really doing the right thing? Because a lot of times in the projects and things I was collaborating, even once the projects are delivered and after the research is being done, we are making the assumptions, and thank you for presenting. It was very great presentations of Tangível. We think, we are sure, we know that we did the right thing because we are loving it, we are seeing it, client is happy because it has deliverables, it has a product or a service, but are we really delivering what people need? And on the other hand, this, most of you, if you're designers, are going to point a probably finger, what is this? This is not about design. But this is very, let's say, simple examples that I'm choosing that it can be really understandable when I speak about design anthropology. So what a design anthropologist would do in this case, it wouldn't just observe, it wouldn't just question things and speak, but why people are all the time choosing the path that is not the path they should walk on. We would sit on the bench and we would just look what people do, and we would take notes and try to see if this is a pattern, or this is if it's repeating pattern, or it's something that young people do but the older ones are considering the right way to go, and so on and so on. I can speak from my experience living 8 years in Lisbon. I'm not Portuguese, but when they made the recognizing the public space in Graça, where I live, and they were changing the how you say, tracks to pass, the passadeira. What happened? I was like confused for next 3-4 months. I was like, why they did this? I don't know where to pass the street. I'm passing here 7 years, and this is not working. Simple as that. But of course, no one ever asked people how they like to do it. So inside, I don't want to lose so much time in this theoretical part, but I want to just show you that even from an academical point of view, or let's say from research, like trained research or scientific academic approach, when we have a look in a Kuhn cycle, I really like and I recommend to everyone who is really deeply interested also to understand theory. It's a book from 70s, but it speaks about scientific revolution. And what is in this approach, it's very interesting that actually the normal science or normal approach, it's, in some moment starts to drift to something else. Why? Because society is changing, and approach, research, design, anthropology, everything is changing with society because we depend, our work depends on society and behavioral patterns and so on. So actually in one moment, with all of the extreme changes in society, the science we have, the approach to research we had, doesn't serve anymore. So of course, in last, let's say, 10 years, maybe especially in last few years, we speak a lot about UX. why this is not a coincidence. It's not just a topic which is very fancy, let's say, in the moment also, but it's also the previous model was in crisis. And from this model, we need revolutionary models, which is changing. So also in the way we approach to this, we are changing the proper approach, how we research and how we observe. I'm going to speak for anthropology. Before we would just observe and write things and reports and deliver them. And right now what we are starting to do, we are starting to combine the different methods from different fields. So in these novel approaches, I'm going to speak a bit more deeper how we work with this in a Give a Shit project with design anthropology, and what is this emerging discipline? Because it's really about combining the two disciplines and two approaches. It's not only saying I'm a user researcher. No, I really use anthropology, which is the first part of the research, and it's actually focusing on problem formulation, and not only from problem formulation through research, but through literature review, to participatory observation, through ethnography as a participatory observation, in-depth interviews, questionnaires, and through this holistic vision where we read and try to understand the big picture of the situation. And I'm very happy that Maria was speaking about the system view, understanding the whole system which is involved in the approach. In the situation, it's not just looking to technology, all the legal part, but really understanding what else is being involved in all the picture. On the other hand, like this is a very simple explanation, and it was used by IKEA, so I'm just trying to show it in which way they used, and we use ethnography when we collaborate with design, or I personally. It's actually doing ethnography, it's looking into ethnography, and researching users, but from this prioritizing the data, prioritizing the problem, because it was already said, but in the first moment the client says, this is the problem I want to research, or this is the theme, or this is the challenge I want to solve. But in that moment, we first of all want to know, is this really the challenge, the right challenge to be solved, or shall it be questioned? And on the second moment, we pass to the ideation phase, where we really go out with the real concrete questions, but we always ask for the feedback. Even when we already have the problem formulated, when we know what is the thing about, we still try to iterate and refine our ideas about what we have. Even if we are testing a product, it's not enough just doing it once with few people and understanding that's it. I really liked you were speaking also about the verification phase, to understand after the process is done if this is really working. From innovation side, we know that maybe I'm wrong, but by the percentage that the data, it says 99% of innovation, it ends up as a garbage, or it's not being used in the market after 6 months. Why? Mostly because the problem formulation is not well done. The first part is being overlooked. So, okay, I already spoke of all of this, but just how combining design in this, it's actually creating solutions. So what we are doing in Give a Shit, it's analyzing in the first part the observation and everything what I presented, but using the design methods, active design methods, co-creation, participatory design actions together with society. So in the both sides, actually, we are looking into the same thing. Designers and anthropologists, we are observing society, behavioral patterns, cultural differences, etc. But we are trying to combine the two parts. So, okay, I'm sure you're very known with this kind of schemes, but just to show also that ethnography that I'm speaking about, it's not only entering in this part of formulation. It should also enter, and it's entering normally in the prototyping part and in the production part, when we do, again, the verification. And most of the time, my question and problematic that I identify through the projects I collaborate is that everyone wants just observation and interviews here. But no one focuses what happens next when we have deliverables, or when we have a product, and when we have a service that we want to offer out there. So this is very important. I don't know if I'm too long, how long I'm taking. Okay, great. So in Give a Shit, I'm going to practically just explain you how this is working and how this started, this project, and why Give a Shit. So if you want to know more, you can have a look in the website and so on. This is like very old image. It's from 2009 when I lived in Barcelona. And actually, as an anthropologist, I think it's a bit professional deformation. I always see things that people don't see, or we anthropologists kind of see. And one of the things I was all the time noticing in Barcelona, it was the urine, the smell of the urine on the street. But this bothered me to the level that really I started to question the situation. And in that moment, I realized that it's really the issue of lack of public toilets in the city space. This is from Lisbon. Once I started to do a real research, in that time I focused the research on public toilets in my master's, on privatization of public space. I realized the situation was the same in Lisbon. And I was like, but it's this Iberian Peninsula, people do this in the street, or what is wrong here? And my assumption about the cultural differences. But the thing is that this is in bigger cities around the world. 2 years ago, I was doing the same research in New York. It's the same, lack of public toilets. But the point of the research that I'm presenting is that once I look into the toilets, in public toilets, I understood that the issue is a lot bigger, that we are speaking about very complex systemic issue, about the taboo in society that it's not being spoken. So on the other hand, I start to look in toilets. 1/3 of the population worldwide, excuse me, there is still 1/3 of population lacking access to the adequate sanitation or adequate toilets in the world. More people have mobile phones than toilets. So it's very bizarre how we give priorities to what we research and what we observe also, and in what we invest innovation. Because we know it's not only absurd situation, because Give a Shit is focusing on developing countries or on our society. Every time we go to toilets, I was just going there and I was thinking, I'm doing again the same wrong thing. But why? Because there is no solution provided to it. We are flushing down the toilet more drinkable water than people have for their daily survival, but we know it's a geographical issue. On the other hand, a part of the geographical issue, I'm also questioning our conscious about society we are living in and about innovations that we are creating, because everyone from us is using toilets every day. And we have millions of applications and innovations technologically happening, but technological investments in toilets didn't happen in the last 130 years, a part of the aesthetical and ergonomical side. And on the other hand, also the resources we are flushing down are also potential renewable resources of energy. So why I'm presenting all of these parts, and you're thinking like, but here I'm here on the UX talk, and why I'm hearing about toilets and poops and papers and so on, it's because I want to present you how systemic vision of research should look like. It's not just observing a product, or it's just seeing how people use things. It's also understanding what is the frame around it, what is the whole frame of the problem or of the theme you are looking at. So I started with public toilets, I went to toilet and water, I understood there is an energy resource, but then I understood cultural problem. We are flushing down 270,000 trees per day, and we use bleached toilet paper. So we are speaking of very complex issue. And all in all, we are doing it wrong. Medical resources are research is showing that we are seated in wrong position, or it's not natural position how we are going how we are defecating daily. So these are kind of, it doesn't look the most beautiful, but it's just very quick assumptions, but they are not assumptions, they were actually answers from the people who speak about the topic, or why. Even when I talk to companies, I always involve different kind of stakeholders. All of these words would come up. And all of these words are very clearly defining we are speaking about the wicked problem, we're speaking about taboo about the situation, and because of all of this, the issue is even harder to be solved. I think I'm taking too long time in problem presentation, so I'm going to jump through this section and go to the practical part of deliverables in the research, but just to say that water is a common good and that we know it's worth only when we don't have it. And we are in Portugal. I don't know how many of you are Portuguese and how many of you, however, we are all living here. And just to show you that this area where you see the green points in the middle, it's a semi-arid area. And in the future, it's foreseen, and this is not a joke, this is real scientific data and last resources. And in 10 to 20 years in front, we are for sure going to face a very big water crisis. The climate is very similar to Cape Town, where last year the city was running towards day zero. And my question is, how we are going to flush the toilet when we don't have the water to flush it down? So in this point of view, how we are doing it, we started everything with research. It's academic research, it's with users, it's collaboration with companies. But on the other hand, we understood that after, I'm going to jump through this because I talked, but slides are obviously upside down. Through this first principle part of the research, after the user interviews, ethnography, and participatory observation, we understood that if we don't communicate the data out there with people, with you here today, thank you for listening, things are not changing because things are not interesting. So how we make in research also the problems that we identify interesting to people, to client, or to an investor. Because a lot of times as researcher, I don't know what is your experience, we identify things that maybe they are not exactly the things that the client wants to hear and solve and work on. So how do we change that? It's most of the time, from my experience, is really the creating the movement or creating the, like you were presenting on the boards, what is really what people want and need, and what are their convictions to really buy their product or use their services. And this first part, it's the artivism. We started to speak about the issue on publicly, just to see how we can create a movement on this kind of situation and integrate stakeholders like companies, City Hall, United Nations, and so on. And why I'm showing you this, because this is also part of UX. This is not just performance and art that you're seeing. These golden poos that you see on the pictures around the holy toilet, around the golden toilet, are the mediating tool to communicate and understand how people feel about things, how people think about things. And I'm going to show you one great example. I'm sorry I'm jumping, but I need because my mind is jumping in front. In these 4 photos, you have just one image that has something different on it. Can please someone identify it? Yeah, excellent. Who was it? Okay, lines on the floor. And this is bizarre, but I need to share this, and this is really UX from my point of view. So this is an installation which was on Porta de Sol for 5 days. And in the first day, installation was like this. And after first day, half of the installation was broken or stolen. And even if the things were glued to the floor, so that meant people needed to make a lot of effort to take golden poos home. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And I was a bit mad and upset. But then, on the other hand, was great because through the observation that I did, once we put the red line, not even one thing was touched or moved from the space. And this is a bit like frustrating, but this is reality of society we live in. How framed we can be and how we can also frame our solutions or present solutions in the way to integrate society in a very simple way, reasonably understanding how they should act and how they should participate in situation. This is art, and you're going to say how this goes to products and so on. This is just a presentation in this, but then I can speak of other examples. In this UX, just to say that also combination of and you were already mentioning, of quality and quantity data, it's essential, of course, absolutely for the client. But what is also true, that without quality data, it's very hard to really have real answers, not real answers, let's say, something that is real, because with quality data, we really bring stories. We don't bring just data. and we bring stories. Normally, we as people, and probably everyone already experienced that, we don't say always what we think. And if we are even asked to do just a survey online, we just say whatever. Sometimes just to push it forward. And to really observe it, it should be combined, the survey with the interview and participatory observation. Also, when you wash the dishes, if this is I'm using very simple and it can sound even stupid examples. But if I tell you, can you tell me how do you wash the dishes? You're going to say, okay, I use a sponge and I put the shampoo and then I wash it and I put it away. Okay. And if you're going to observe the person, what you're going to see? How he do it. So you're going to see he opened the water. Probably if it's a conscious person, it's going to close it right away after it's wetting the sponge. And what is going to happen next? You're going to see, if you observe 2 or 3 people washing the dishes, something else or what they were communicating to you. So this is why we say participatory observation. It's not only listening. It's not only, I have an interview, I have a line, I have a guideline, and that's it. It's also seeing if sometimes people are nervous to speak of things. There are people who don't like to speak. In companies, we have situations when only the boss wants to speak. We know that's sometimes true. So we need to hear everyone, from cleaning lady to I don't know who, everyone who is included in this research you're doing. Okay, so all in all, essential pillars that we are using and approaching in Give a Shit, it's a multi-stakeholder inclusion, having a systemic vision about situation, using active design methods, and as deliverables, as a final output, is always creating strategic proposals. So it's not having a final answer, but it's saying how you should get there, it's showing the way, and it's having an, let's say, inspiration for what you want to do. And I think anthropology is very good in bringing up the sparkles for the ideas and creative solutions. So this is, there are a lot of slides, but this, stopping on this slide, one thing that I didn't mention so far, and then I'm almost finishing, it's that in these workshops that we are creating, and there are most of them, this is about the water. It was about workshops about water management, urban water management in future cities. We always listen what people have to say, but different kind of stakeholders. Because when we started to do it in a company, they said, okay, we have ideas and we are enough for a workshop. And then we said, no, let's see what people want to share with you or what City Hall wants to share with you. And in this case, like you see presentations, this data here presented by people to us, it's always the guideline for what we are going to deliver as a final output. Of course, then we evaluate it and upgrade it and so on and so on. So creating the future, I need to jump, I think, because I feel I'm taking very long. No? Or if you're enjoying, I can show you all, but the project is very big. So this is interior design, and why, I cannot call it, of course, you're going to say interior design. It's an installation in a public toilet, but it literally serves as an interior design because it's there and it's going to stay there. It's already there for 3 years, I think, and it's still serving its purpose. But a part of that, it's an educational tool, and it's informing about all these problematics that I was showing you. But all in all, this kind of tools can also serve for observation. This is a very specific example from Give a Shit, and maybe for you it's a bit weird to do it. But one other example of researching the water, people told me, mostly foreigners, I don't like to drink tap water in Lisbon. It doesn't taste good. And I was like, okay, probably you're right. It's how you feel about it. And in one research, when we were doing the quality research of the data, collecting the data about the quality of water and also about the taste, what we were doing, we were trying to give people drink water from glasses, tap water and the bottled water. 60% people didn't know the difference between which one was the drinkable and which was, they were both drinkable. Whoops. Which one was the tap water and which one was the bottled water. So this is also about the assumptions, how we perceive things, and how we can also research, because the tool, it's not only question. You give people to try out things and see if that really happens, what they say. because we, by ourselves, have a lot of assumptions about things and so on. So what we are envisioning, it's water-sensitive cities, and hopefully that this kind of images are not going to be just futuristic images, but this is really what should happen involving different kind of stakeholders. And just to finish, how I came from public toilets and toilets to this kind of image, it's really the systemic vision about situation. It's not only envisioning the product, of course, you know, and products should be hopefully more and more multifunctional and scalable. But in this case, also to understand how we can do that, we need to start in small things and envision the whole future. And this is what we do with the creation of strategies, where we also propose the long-term solutions. And that's it. Thank you.
Questions, everybody? Shitty questions, good questions, doesn't matter. Anybody want to ask something? Everybody wants to just have a break and eat something?
Are we going to come back?
Yes, we're going to come back.
Question?
No, for something else.
First of all, I want to thank you because it's rare to see someone talk about a subject with as much passion as you just did, and I think everyone was just following you. No one was caring about the time. My question is a different one, which is you're talking about a holistic view and thinking about all the system and all the moving parts in the system, and Pablo is just taking coffee.
Part of the system.
Water is being spoiled right now.
And I'm the first to recognize how important that is, to find leverage points in a specific system that you can take advantage of them. At the same time, and taking the conversation a little bit away from UX and mostly to entrepreneurship and startups, we're always being told you need to focus, you need to just nail this one thing down. How do you look at this view of just looking at a small piece in a system and focusing on that and having a bigger view?
Okay, great. Thank you. Great question. What's your name? And your background? Psychology? Okay. Yeah, it's great because this is one of the big difficulties once you start to have so much data. Of course, I presented you a project that I'm developing from, it started in 2009, the idea. So it's a lot of data, and you can go really crazy if you don't narrow it down. But in this specific case that I can speak, and then I can explain you also on others, it's really also depends on the, of course, of the project, because I'm invited for different kind of situations and different kind of projects. And one of the examples, for example, user interface on toilets. There was an example, and we know most of the time we have a dual flush. How we do it. So what they wanted to do, they wanted to innovate. We are using too much water in the commercial centers in flush. The most of the water in flushing in commercial centers is flushed down the toilet. So we said, okay, let's intervene there. But they didn't want to invest in the technology. So what we said, okay, we had a holistic vision, how much water they use. I had an overview of the situation, what is happening, what is the pattern behavior, yeah. Thank you, I'm tired, sorry. And in that time I realized it's so simple as this, that user interface is made on a wrong way, on not a very simple, understandable way. So what happened, it's just to intervene in a very small part of the product that already exists and improve it in the site. It's not taking off the technology and procreating whatever other solution, because it's very expensive and it can be costly and timely to do these kind of innovations. So it's really having the overview of system, but then understanding how I can intervene in this particular site if I want to diminish use of water in this particular commercial center. So it's, but...
And now I'm curious about the deliverable in that part. Did you come up with a with a potential solution for that?
Actually, the project is happening right now, okay, and hopefully I cannot still speak publicly about it, but I can explain you what's planned to do. It's intervene, like I now explain you, but in a way that people can understand. Very simply, you see plus and minus, or you see where you should push the button. It's so simple as that. And with the smart meter, water meters that they are installed in the buildings, they are going to be installed in the building, we are going to see how behavioral pattern is changing. So I cannot still assure that that's working, but I'm sure it's going to work. Because we already did previously these small interventions with arts and so on, and we would have feedback how the behaviors were changing. Okay? But it's a very complex and big thing, but in any kind of situation, yeah, it's not easy to narrow it, but really seeing the specific issue you want to solve in the situation. Yeah.
Next question. Top questioner of the day.
I'm sorry about that.
That's great.
It's the point. It's the actual.
Yeah, thanks a lot as well. I was just wondering, so I understood that, I mean, we are humans, and I mean, humans have habits, and we are tough to change, right? I mean, everybody's like conformed to their current life. So I was just wondering, throughout your experience, you know, how much can you actually change from education and from behavior, and how much can you actually, or do you actually need to enforce as in a system, you know, to change laws or change the way that products are made? That's, I guess, my question, yeah.
Very good. Great. Yeah, the project started as a very rebellion project. So it said, no, this is not working, we need to speak about it, and we want to change this in society. Of course, it's not working like this, unfortunately. It works to some level, but it's really not working to changing it, because even if you change your habit, you cannot change the fact that you have drinkable water in your toilet. So you're still going to flush it, even if you don't want to do that. So from this rebellion, artivism and education, now the project, it's focusing on what I'm mostly doing. It's a consultancy, where it's really trying to communicate and to see with companies and the city halls or like governmental part. Hopefully next year it's going to be published, I'm going to publish a policy paper on this, where I'm creating the guidelines how this legally should be also overcome. Because in Portugal, I don't know if you know, but by the law it's still forbidden to use the rainwater in your own homes to flush toilet, for example. By the law you cannot do it. You can do it in a big superfícies, like in commercial centers or whatever, but individually you cannot because of the social security and so on and so on. So of course, legal part, it's essential to be overcome if you want to change something. And on the other hand, when I made the research in companies, it's like in energy sector, it's a lot of investment and in technology and so on. But there are no, let's say, fundings to support innovation specifically in this sector. Because who looks at toilet? It's like, but then every day all of us use toilet all the time, no? It's like, it's very bizarre. But behavioral things to say, one thing that for sure it's very seen how you can really influence it, and what I experience is really to experience situations where you don't have water. I believe once you experience situations when you don't have something that you should have to do things, you're going to look on situations completely differently. It's experiencing things, it's feeling things, and especially in this situation of what we are doing, I feel very much we are living in a very apathic society when we are very disconnected from the reality out there. We live in very big reality, but solving the situations, education needs to change essentially, because if we are not in contact with natural resources, if we don't see where the water comes from, and you just flush it down, you forget what happened next. And you forget from where it came, and you forget it's drinkable water. In the research I did, 30% of people didn't know that we are flushing down the drinkable water. And so it's not bizarre, it's the fact. And until we don't know what happens behind, it's very hard to change it. But it needs to come from the top down and bottom up. It's for sure not happening just because we want it. But without the market to buy it and support it. There are technological examples. I collaborate regularly with Roca company of bathroom spaces. And what it happens, they have sustainable products. They reuse the gray water in flushing and so on. But people don't buy it. Why? It's very expensive. Of course, it's too expensive, also in my opinion. 2,000 euros for a toilet, it's a bit crazy. But on the other hand, it's also the thing there is no market for it. Because things are correlated. It's like before, it's like LCD screen was very expensive and things are starting to lower. The prices are lowering with the demand. So that's also normal and natural. And we need to demand things that they change. Thank you.
More questions? One last question. Everybody's sleeping or what? Everybody's tired. It's still the middle of the week. We still have Thursday and Friday.
So first of all, I also want to say that it was really cool, your presentation. And like he said, like it's clear that you're very passionate about everything, and it's a very complete perspective. I was wondering about the part where you talked about the lines on the floor, where you put, and I wanted to ask you a bit more about that. Like, what was, so you put the golden poops on the floor, and the objective was for people to be sensitized by the fact that if we don't have water to flush, then there will be poop on the street, or what was the idea? I was trying to understand.
Okay. Yeah, it didn't.
And last thing, sorry, just also the toilet with the art installation. Where is it?
Yeah, there are several in the cities. Okay, where to start? Toilets. The green one is in Elšiš factory. It's a man toilet actually, and it's a very interesting toilet to use. And then there is the.
It's pretty cool. You need to find the poops.
And we were the two women working on that toilet, so it was very interesting to be observing the reactions. On the other hand. There are two more toilets in a co-work in Beato in Now, where Give a Shit is also based. So we were intervening there, and there are also the two educational parts. And now, like I'm saying, they are going to expand into a bigger scale, but this is like it's happening. But about the installations, I didn't speak because every installation has a research behind. So that first installation came from the raising the awareness of lack of toilets in public space and in general in the world. Because of this, it's it's a luxury to have it. 1/3 of population still don't have it. And on the other hand, the poos are representing the potential energy of our excrements, because we can transform them into biogas, bioplastic, electricity. There are buses in Bristol driving on human excrements. Fertilizer, bioconstruction material, it's never-ending story. It's really so much potential in transforming that into something valuable. And technologically speaking, and this is it's my big question and my big research is, we have solutions, but we don't implement them, or they are not being used or implemented. So that is the question that we were there working. And most of it was also seeing the taboo, because most of the time people in the first installation we did in Restauradores, they would see installation, but they would do like, what I do here? And then after a while, we were there for 1 hour, people start to look and they want to see what's happening. And what is the most important part also in this research and the lines and so on, that people start to interact by themselves. Because we are most of the time, we are tired. We have very busy schedules. We are overloaded with informations. And if things don't get to us spontaneously, if we don't have spontaneous communication, humor, something easygoing, we don't even want to know about more problems or about more solutions. It's so big. So that was the intention, to integrate people and see what they do with that installation. It was simple as that. And I was 5 days just there sitting like I'm a visitor. And it was very interesting because people wanted to take a lot of photos on toilet. So that was like, wow, that's super. People really want to sit on the toilet and, oh, can you make a selfie with me? And that was like, big discovery. That we really like it, but yeah, depends on what way it's presented. I don't know if
Instagrammable toilets.
Yeah.
Last question? Last question? Nobody? Okay. Oliver, go on, Oliver.
I want to know why the red lines on the floor stop people stealing the poos. Do you have any hypotheses about that or not?
Yeah. Oh, that's a rough question, and because it's very simple, but it's I'm saying rough because red line. I think it's very clear what is red line. No, it's like there is no passage. Stop there, with the car when you're driving and so on. It's also, I think it's already kind of imprinted when you see something, barrier. On the other hand, in gallery spaces, I got inspired, my idea came because I needed to act very fast. I was like, so how they do it? How they really do it, that people don't break things? And then I remembered, of course, in gallery, you simply have a line and it says don't touch. Or we didn't even say don't touch, we just put it there and it really worked. And it was crazy. I don't know, like, I didn't study the psychology part of this, but from observation, I see people really act like that. And that was like, yeah, I'm not going to use the word I wanted, but crazy. Crazy shit, really, to understand that you can really do it with this kind of things, you know? And so it's also questioning how easy is to frame solutions or not. Yeah.
All right, so let's take a small break and eat some food, talk to each other, network a bit, blah, 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 blah. And we will come back for a little exercise where we're going to try to answer the question about research that we'll present in a bit, okay? So go ahead. See you soon.